Hello students, this is Mr. Russell here on a lovely Wednesday in Mr. Wright's room because he's at softball practice, so he's not here to tell me that I can't use his room. Boom! Anyway, I'm here doing the last chunk of the cell structures notes for you guys, and that would be our other structures, and we'll talk about what those actually involve right now. Anyway, okay, so what our other organelles are is some things you'll find in plants and animals. We're going to discuss these first. Have lysosomes and mitochondria. If you don't know what those are, that's okay because the video just started. All right, and then we're going to go in and talk about some things that you only find in plant cells, like cell walls, chloroplasts, and central vacuoles. Okay, lysosomes are basically these little sacs. We've talked about vesicles some, and it's a vesicle that actually contains enzymes, hydrolase enzymes, which enzymes break things down. Actually, enzymes do a lot of different things, but these enzymes break things down. And the word hydrolase just means that they break things down using water. It's how your cells digest sugars and things like that. And basically what they do is they break down materials that your cells don't need anymore, waste products, in order to maintain a homeostasis. Obviously, too much of anything is a bad thing, so you have to get rid of stuff that you don't need anymore. This is kind of a very simplistic drawing, but what it is it's a little membrane-bound sac. Go ahead and giggle. And it's full of, a lot of times, many different enzymes, like maybe 50 different enzymes that are all there to digest specific things. Okay, and actually this prefix lys, it comes from, I don't actually know if it comes from ancient Greek or Latin, but it means to break things down, and you'll see that lys show up periodically this year. So that's lysosomes. They break down cellular wastes. And this is an actual electron micrograph of lysosomes. So this is what they look like through a microscope after they've been stained. So you can see that it's all kind of in a bubble shape. It's trapped by a membrane. And inside of that is a bunch of different enzymes that break things down. Okay, little trash truck there because they get rid of waste in the cell. All right, next thing is mitochondria. These are extremely important. This is the plural. You might see mitochondrion with an I-O-N at the end instead of an I-A, and that's the singular. Okay, mitochondria are kind of like the power plants of the cells. They break down your food to get energy into a usable form, and that usable form is ATP. That stands for adenosine triphosphate. We'll talk about that more next objective. But ATP is what all of your cells use to do almost everything. You need it for your muscles to contract, and your neurons and your nervous system need it to communicate with one another. You need ATP to do everything. You can kind of think of it like electricity in your house. You use electricity for everything in your house. That electricity's got to be made from a different form. We'll talk about more about it next objective. Okay, mitochondria have two membranes, so they kind of have a double wall that surrounds them. The first one is smooth, and it really just encapsulates the entire thing. I have a picture on the next slide I'll show you. The inner membrane is folded up to increase its surface area because that's where it actually makes this energy that it needs. Another cool thing about mitochondria is that they have their own DNA that's totally separate from the rest of the DNA in the nucleus, and this only gets passed down from mother to child. So your mitochondrial DNA is pretty much the same as your mom and your maternal grandmother and her mother and her mother and her mother back a long way. So it's one way that you can actually track your maternal lineage is through your mitochondrial DNA. Okay, and because they have their own DNA, they actually reproduce on their own. This is a picture of one. You see we have the smooth outer membrane and then the inner membrane that is all folded up on itself. Okay, this is a micrograph, so that's a picture taken with a microscope. No, they're not blue in real life. This one has been dyed to make it easier to see. But it's a cross section. It's been sliced in half, kind of like this has. And it shows you the outer membrane around the outside and the folded inner membrane. And that's where your cells make most of the ATP they need to do everything. Okay, the next things we have to talk about are things that are only found in plant cells. Okay, so animal cells don't have these. only plant cells have them. So it makes sense that these are all things that are really important for things that only plants do, especially photosynthesis. Okay, and that's a picture of a plant cell. It shows you a cell wall around the outside. A chloroplast is a little green thing, and this is actually something that is the right color. If you look in a plant cell, chloroplasts are green. All this other stuff, not these colors. Chloroplasts are actually green most of the time. And a central vacuole is really just a huge storage bubble there, so we'll see that in a minute. Okay, the cell wall is a tough layer that actually goes around the outside of the cell membrane. All cells have cell membranes no matter what. Some cells have cell walls, including plant cells, and bacterial cells all have cell walls. Animal cells do not, and that's part of why we are so able to flex in the way we do and do so many different things in so many different directions, is because our cells are more flexible because they lack cell walls. They are composed of a bunch of different proteins and carbohydrates, and that is a part of what gives them their firm structure. Okay, they help support the cell. They give plant cells their shape, and they protect the cells from damage. The cell wall is actually a lot of what gives plants their tough characteristics. Like if you think of a tree trunk made out of wood, that's hard. That's a lot harder than most of the parts of your body, and most of that comes from cell walls. So they protect the cell, they support it. You'll notice nowhere on here you see controlling traffic in and out of the cell. The cell membrane does that. The cell wall doesn't. So you can kind of think it's almost like a big cage that surrounds the cell membrane. So it doesn't control what enters and leaves. It just keeps the cell from getting squished flat. Okay, moving on. Oh, it also connects it with adjacent cells. That means the other cells that are next to it. Part of what gives plants their tough characteristics. And also gives this fabulous Pink Floyd album its characteristics. Boom. All right, last one we have to talk about is chloroplasts. Okay, these are extremely important. They use light energy to make sugars or carbohydrates from carbon dioxide and water. I'm sure you already know that plants take in sunlight, and they take in carbon dioxide from the air, and they take in water, usually from the ground, and they use that photosynthesis. They turn those into carbohydrates that the plants can use for various things, and then also animals such as ourselves can eat those plants and get energy from them. Okay, they supply energy to much of the cell, like this says. The mitochondria actually get their energy, the energy they burn, from the chloroplasts, which make it. So they don't serve the same purpose, but they're both part of an important process. Okay, just like mitochondria, they have their own DNA. And they actually reproduce separately also. So there's a lot of things mitochondria and chloroplast have in common. There's a lot of interesting biological theories about how that came to be, something that we might have a chance to talk about in class, or you can Google it on your own. Okay, here's a picture of a chloroplast. You'll notice we have an outer membrane and a bunch of folded membranes inside, kind of like we saw in mitochondria. Okay. This is a cartoony picture. This is an actual micrograph. This has not been stained. If you look under at plant cells underneath a microscope, you will see they have kind of a boxy shape, and you'll notice they're very tightly connected to the cells around them. That is because of their cell walls. And you also see all these little green dots. Those are the chloroplasts, and that's where photosynthesis happens. That's how plants make their own energy. Okay, oh, I lied. I said the last one was the last one. It wasn't. This is the last one. Plants have a great big storage space called a central vacuole. Animal cells actually have vacuoles too, but there's a bunch of them and they're smaller. Plants have one great big one called a central vacuole, and they use that for storage. They nutrients and ions, and the ions are really just minerals that plants need. If you ever heard of electrolytes, like that you get from Gatorade, that's kind of what ions is talking about. Plants need things like that too. Nutrients, meaning the carbon dioxide or other minerals they need. Water is going to be stored there. Actually, that's most of what's in there. And then waste products that have yet to be broken down or gotten rid of are going to be found here. Okay, here's kind of a cartoony picture of one, and it's really just a great big storage bubble, like I said. You can see some chloroplasts hanging around in here too, so we know it's a plant cell. Okay, this is another micrograph. The blue and green lines are not natural, they were added. The blue line shows you the cell wall, that's the outside of the plant cell. Okay, and the green line is the central vacuole on the inside, and this actually shows you just how much space they take up. A lot of times the majority of volume inside of a plant cell is actually central vacuole. So they do take up quite a bit of space. One other thing I want to talk about on this slide too is if you've ever had a plant in your house and you forgot to water it for a few days and it starts to get all limp and soft, they call that wilting. That's because the plant, through photosynthesis, is using the water that was stored in its central vacuoles. And as that happens, kind of like if you blow up a balloon real big and then let the air out of it, and when it's done, it gets all shriveled up kind of. That's basically what happens to cells on a plant when they don't get watered. They start to use up their water stores, and that causes them, because there's less pressure in there, they actually start to wilt. They get soft and kind of start to fall over. Okay, here's pictures of a plant cell and animal cell right next to one another. And you can notice that they have most of the same things. They have nuclei, they have the endoplasmic reticulum, they both have mitochondria. Common mistake is that animal cells have mitochondria and plant cells have chloroplasts. They both have mitochondria, only plant cells have chloroplasts. Anyway, lots of things in common, but you do see a central vacuole, this thick cell wall around the outside of the cell membrane, and chloroplasts for photosynthesis. So that is the difference between plant and animal cells. I'm not going to go over all of these, but if you're watching this video and you need to write anything down, this is kind of a cool little page that shows you, gives you basic definitions of a bunch of different things. So you can go ahead and hit the old pause button and write that down. Okay, that's about it for this lesson. If you have any questions, you can see Mr. Russell or Mr. Messina about it. Have a nice day.